The Sacramento Kings continue to lose, but sometimes winning is losing, and losing is winning.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Kings. I am James Ham, your Kings insider for ESPN 1320 and the Kings Beat. I'm also your host of Locked On Kings. Sacramento Kings continue to lose. That's not a good thing, at least most of the time. And we're going to dive into what winning and losing means to the Sacramento Kings, especially in the final 28 games of the season. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day. Locked On Kings is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcasting network. Today's episode is sponsored by FanDuel. The winter games are on, and there's no better way to follow them than with a bet on FanDuel. FanDuel, play your game. All right, we're going to hit all kinds of topics tonight. We're going to dive into this Neat Clifford breakout game first, and it kind of plays into a much larger conversation that I think is worth having. Number two, this opportunity for Neat Clifford, it might be a similar opportunity for other players, and kind of want to look and see what that looks like. And then lastly, I think there is a way to turn this negative season into a positive for the Kings franchise, and hopefully that's what's happening right now. So let's first dive into this game that Neat Clifford had on Saturday night. Super impressive. And look, the Kings have put a lot of stake in this young kid. They used a future first round pick from the San Antonio Spurs in a swap last year on draft day to go out and get him. They gave up again the 2027 San Antonio Spurs pick to get Neat Clifford. It's the Kings protected the pick 1 through 16. So if San Antonio is a playoff team, maybe a top tier playoff team, then they're going to lose that pick to the Oklahoma City Thunder. If somehow the Spurs have a rough year and they're either a lottery team or, top 15 or 16 in the draft, then the Kings will keep that pick, and two 2027 second round picks, one from Charlotte and one from the Kings, will go to Oklahoma City to take care of that trade from last summer. So the Kings did invest heavily in Neat Clifford, and to be honest, they've invested heavily in his investment throughout this season. They have given him plenty of opportunities. They've made him a key member of their rotation the entire year. There might be a game here or there where he plays less than 10 minutes, but that's a thing in the past now. Neat Clifford is what the Kings are focusing on today. And, to be honest with you, when you have a young player who stands up and puts up 30 points in a game, you have to take notice. And that's something that we're going to look into a lot today. Look, I think this is interesting. Neat Clifford is not a pure scorer. He's a jack of all trades, master of none type player. A Swiss Army knife is what Doug Christie likes to call players like this. But he's also a very useful player. He's a very strong defensive guy. He plays defense with his chest. He's got a long wingspan. He's super strong. He can defend multiple positions, the 1, the 2, and the 3. So there's a lot to like about him as a player coming in. He's also a multifaceted player on the offensive end. In his final year at Colorado State, he figured out how to draw fouls, and that's something he added to his game and bumped his points per game in his final year, his 5th year in college. He also became a better passer, and you can see it at the NBA level. He does a really nice job of getting to the key, firing the ball out to his teammates, and he's on time, on target. He also throws bullet passes. He's got great court vision. Also, is a player that averaged over 9 rebounds a game in college. So when you hear things like the Kings might move off of Keon because they really like the future of Neat Clifford, it's kind of interesting. And then when you start to see him play in games like the loss on Saturday night, you start to see a bigger picture and why this might matter going forward. So again, I'm not going to put so much stake in one 30-point game, but I'll point out that Clifford played 154 games at the college level at Colorado, and then at Colorado State is where he finished up. And during those 154 games, He only scored 30 or more twice. Now, again, it's a college game, scores are lower, but he was a primary player, especially the last 2 years on Colorado. So for him to jump up at the NBA level is kind of like what we saw from Dylan Cardwell the other night, where here's a player who in, again, 5 years of college basketball at Auburn had 10 or more rebounds 4 times. He's now accomplished that feat 7 times. And so at the NBA level in like 27 games, 28 games. So it's crazy to watch some of these players not only develop, but develop beyond who they were at the college level, even older prospects. Nate Clifford will turn 24 years old this week. He has a birthday coming up, but 24 years old. It's not like this is a young kid. And the same with Dylan Cardwell. He's already 24. But for them to take these steps is really interesting. And I'll relay the way that I think of Nate Clifford's 30-point game is a little bit of the way I look at the 47-point game that Keegan Murray had a couple of years ago. It showed you that he could do more than what he's doing right now. And to me, that's a like super, super important part of developing a player and to look at their ceiling. And, again, I'll kind of compare this, the Kings are notorious for giving up career games to players. This year was Harkenstein for OKC put up like 34 points or whatever it was. He never scored more than like 24 points in a game, and that's crazy. When the Kings got Kevin Huerter, he was like 6, 7 years into his NBA career. He never scored 30 in a game. And he didn't do that. I don't think he did that in his first year in Sacramento. I think it was his second year in Sacramento where he finally had a 30-point game. So for Nate Clifford to go out in his rookie season and put up 30, is super impressive. And then when you look at the other stuff, he goes 12 of 19 from the field and 5 of 9 from 3. He also added 4 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals, 2 blocks. Like, look, those are numbers that, again, I don't expect him to go 12 of 19 from the field very often. He may never go 12 of 19 from the field ever again. But the potential is being realized, and that's something, again, potential for me, I've said this a million times in the past, potential at the NBA level is like a four-letter word. It's profanity. You need productivity, and that's what this was. It's productivity. It's a guy who stuffed the stat books, who played defense at a very high clip, who gave you more than what you expected, and again, it was against a very good Cleveland Cavaliers team. It was against players like Donovan Mitchell and James Harden and, those types of all-star players. And I thought he did a really, really nice job. And again, I think it plays into a much bigger discussion about the future of the Sacramento Kings. So I don't think this is something we're going to see the rest of the season. And Nate Clifford all of a sudden is going to be a Rookie of the Year candidate. He's not even part of the Rising Stars Challenge. But what I do think is this shows you a pathway forward for the Sacramento Kings where every single game isn't just about doom and gloom and another loss. The Kings have lost 12 straight games. Their losing streak right now is 12. They have 12 wins on the season. So that's crazy to have a losing streak as long as the amount of wins you have in the season. And I think that they're trying to play hard and they're trying to do things the right way, but at the same time, you can see that they're relying on guys like Nate Clifford to finish out games. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. All right, we're going to step aside. When we come back, I'm going to add in another player to this conversation because I think the Nate Clifford conversation really does play into what's going to happen with Keegan Murray in the second half of the season or the post All-Star break situation. So when we come back, let's chat Keegan Murray. Shoot your shot on PrizePicks and get $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. That's right. PrizePicks is giving you $50 in lineups when you sign up and play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks makes every dunk, every dime, and every board that much more exciting. It's America's #1 app for sports picks. PrizePicks is simple to play. You just pick more or less on 2 to 6 players' stat projections. And if your picks are right, you cash in. You can choose from basketball, baseball, hockey, soccer, UFC, and more. Plus, they've got features like early payouts and flex play. So you've got options while the games are still happening. I love a good PrizePicks lineup. Sure, I've had some bad beats, talked about them before, but it adds a new element to watching a game, and there's nothing like watching a game to the bitter end, waiting for one more free throw or one more bucket or one more rebound. And I'll tell you this too, I've used the early payouts. I I had three quarterbacks on one of the final NFL games of the season, weeks of the season. I had three different quarterbacks I was looking at. The first 5 minutes of a game, two of those quarterbacks had scored a touchdown. And I said, you know what? I'm good. And I cashed out early. So download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's Locked On NBA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks. It's good to be right. All right. Watching me, Clifford, I was sitting there watching him have a career night. And the thing that kept sticking out to me was something very simple and also something that I'm not sure that everybody else in the building was looking at. That is that in a game where Malik Monk and Demonis Sabonis and Zach LaVine all sat out. And of course, Keegan Murray is out as well. And a game where you're starting to see the Kings go away from a Russell Westbrook for long stretches and a DeMar DeRozan for long stretches. There's actually something else happening. And it's something that I think really will matter to the Sacramento Kings moving forward. And it's one number, again, 30 points, 5 of 9 from 3, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals, 2 blocks. Like all of these numbers that we saw Nate Clifford put up are really cool. But the only number that really mattered to me, because again, the Kings lost the game, and again, moral victories, whatever. I'm not really into that, but the one thing that did stand out was the 19 shot attempts. And that's something that I'm really, really hoping will carry over for this team. And not just for Nate Clifford, but for Keegan Murray. In the final 28 games or whatever there are left, 27 games, I'm not even sure at this point. They all run in together. But in the final stretch of games, there's 2 games here before the All-Star break. And then, there's the All-Star break. And then the Kings are going to have this sprint to the finish. They've got a lot of winnable games, to be honest with you. They have the second easiest schedule right now remaining in the NBA. And so there's going to be opportunities for some momentum to be built for some of these players. And what the Kings need to do, in my opinion, is to look at what this team will look like after this season. What will this team look like when DeMar DeRozan isn't here, when Russell Westbrook isn't here, when, again, a diminished role for Zach LaVine probably next year if he's still on the roster. There's a possibility he was almost traded the NBA trade deadline, a moment where Demonis Sabonis will no longer be a Sacramento King. This team needs to transition to what's next. And you can say, well, that's really difficult to do with the veterans. And you can also say, well, there's also these players like Nate Clifford has played plenty of minutes, and Dylan Cardwell, and like a lot of these players played plenty of minutes. And even Keegan Murray, who I want to center on here, he plays 35, 36 minutes a night when he's healthy. Unfortunately, he hasn't been healthy all season. And, to be honest, like when you hear Doug Christie talk about this, like we're this deep into the season, and Demonis Sabonis and Keegan Murray have never played together the entire year. That to me is bonkers. But here's the deal. I don't just need to see Keegan Murray play 35 to 37, maybe 38 minutes a game the second half of the season. That doesn't really matter because he's been doing that for the last 3.5 years. It's, can you get to a point where Keegan Murray is taking 15 to 20 shots per night, where the opportunity isn't about minutes, it's about true opportunity to be a number 1, number 2, number 3 option for this team. Because to be honest with you, we're really dangerously close to this moment where I think people are going to realize that the only way out of this hole that the Kings are in are, draft picks, this coming year's draft, but also a player like Keegan Murray, who you just signed to a 5-year, $140 million extension that kicks in next year. He's going to start making $26, $27, $28 million a year. He's going to be more of the face of this franchise. I don't just need him to be a 3-and-D player. If he's going to be the next thing for the Sacramento Kings, he has to have opportunity. Opportunity has to look like what we saw from Clifford in the loss to the Cavs. It's got to be feeding him and getting Keegan Murray in positions to succeed, setting screens for him, running the offense through him for stretches. And I know there are a lot of people out there that say, well, that's just not his game. And the fact is, we don't know if that's his game or not. He walked into this season and your starting point guard was Dennis Schroeder. Your starting shooting guard, Zach LaVine. Your starting small forward was DeMar DeRozan. Your starting center was Domantas Sabonis. And your starting power forward was Keegan Murray. Of course, he got hurt early on, and so he missed that. But he was the 5th option in the offense to open the season. Maybe you could argue with me that he's the 4th option and Dennis Schroeder was the 5th option, but that's semantics. And when the Kings shifted very quickly to Russell Westbrook, Keegan Murray became the 5th option, and they don't need him to be a 5th option. They need to test and see if he can be a 3rd option on a playoff team, or maybe a 2nd option on a playoff team, whether he can be, a player that he's comped to so often when he was young is Chris Middleton. And I know a lot of people out there are just writing it off saying, hey, look, that's not who he is. And I'll combat that with, we don't know who Keegan Murray is still. And that's because this roster has been broken, and it's been broken for the last couple of years. And he went from a guy standing in the corner as a rookie to a guy who took a very nice leap in year 2 and it was averaging 15 points a game and projected as an 18-point to 20-point scorer in his 3rd year. And then that went out the window when the team signed DeMar DeRozan. This isn't about DeMar DeRozan. It's about Keegan Murray stepping up and having a bigger voice, him stealing that bigger voice and saying, this is who I am. I'm going to shoot the ball more. But also guys like Russell Westbrook, guys like DeMar DeRozan, and then the rest of these young players kind of understanding that this is Keegan Murray's team. We heard DeMar DeRozan say it early in the season when Keegan had a big night. He said, this is Keegan's team. This is Keegan's team moving forward. Fortunately, he's got hurt quite a few times this year, which isn't really par for the course. This is a new thing for him to have injuries like this. And there's nothing you can do about, a grade 2 ankle sprain. But for me, the pathway forward for the Sacramento Kings, it is through your former number 4 overall pick. And you got to see what you have. And look, he might not step up. He might not own up to what he should be as a player. He might not take the leap, but you have to at least check it out, because this team looks a whole lot different next season if you're going out into the draft and you already know that you have a guy that you're going to build around, and he can play the 3 or the 4, and you can go out into the draft and you can go select a top tier 3 or a top tier 4 and move Keegan around, or you can go get yourself a really high end scorer in Darren Peterson at number 1. But at least you know that you have one rotational player for sure moving forward, with all these other players that may or may not be on this roster moving forward. So that's what I'm hoping that will happen. And to be honest with you, I think we're going to have some of these talking points with some of the other players as well. So Keegan Murray, top of my list of, hey, look, I need to see you be more. And we're going to see if he can do that. And it'll be, to be honest with you, it'll be really interesting to see. So when we come back, we're going to look at a couple of these other players that are getting opportunities and whether or not they can take advantage of that opportunity for themselves. The winter games are officially here, and if you're anything like us, you're locking in for events you only get to see on the biggest stage every 4 years. And that's why following the winter games on FanDuel just makes sense. From medal counts to individual events to finding your angle on the sports you care about most, FanDuel gives you more ways to stay connected to the action. The drama of curling matches that start slow and somehow gets intense fast. You can also catch former NBC Sports Bay Area guy Jim Cozumore as part of curling and badminton and a lot of the other Olympic games. So that's always fun as well. Speed skating races are decided by inches. Hockey games that feel different right from the opening face-off. Like, look, we even saw the Lindsey Vonn accident today where she was injured. Like, the Olympic Games are a huge draw, and FanDuel is here for you. The Winter Games are on, and that there's no better way to follow them than with FanDuel. FanDuel, play your game. This episode of Locked On Kings is also brought to you by Indeed. Hiring isn't just about finding someone willing to take the job. It's about finding the right person with the right background who can actually help your business move forward. And if you want candidates who match what you're looking for, Indeed sponsored jobs is the move. Because instead of hoping the right person stumbles across your post, Indeed helps you match with quality candidates by boosting your job listings to the people who fit your specific criteria, like skills, certifications, and locations. That's what I like about Indeed. You can get specific and targeted and target exactly what you need. It saves time because you're spending less energy sorting through mismatches. And with sponsored jobs, your post gets seen by candidates who actually fit. And there's a stat that helps it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on it, Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners to this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help you get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, do it the right way with Indeed. All right, let's dive back into this. The NBA draft lottery is one aspect of a losing season that we're going to focus on, and trust me, I'm already watching uh, Devonta and Wilson and man Darren Peterson, and you're sitting here scouting and trying to figure out who's going to be good at the next level. Cam Boozer, like a little bit of I don't know, Paolo Banchero mixed with like a stronger, less Gumby like Alperen Şengün. Darren Peterson keeps compared to Kobe. And then you're wondering what's going on with the cramps and that issue where he's missed a bunch of time because of weird cramping. Devonta just looks like a guy who he doesn't care. He's going to go out there and push the envelope and he's going to take shots and he's fearless. And so there are a lot of things we're going to focus on in the coming months as, Locked On Kings. And that's because the Kings have the worst record in the NBA, bar none. The Pacers have 13 wins. The Pelicans, Nets, and Wizards all are at 14 wins. The Sacramento Kings right now have the number one odds to land the top pick in the draft. They are the number one spot in the NBA draft lottery. Now, again, the NBA draft lottery hasn't exactly been nice or kind to the number one overall spot here over the last couple of years, but still the worst the Kings can end up if they are the worst team in the league is with the 5th overall pick. And so there are going to be really good players, star level players that the Kings are going to focus on. But until we get to that, we can't just say, hey, look, this season's over and just throw the rest of the games out. That's not the way it works. You got to play the games, and the Kings are going to have to continue to go out there and, to be honest with you, get their head kicked in here and there. I think they are playing better. I think they're playing a better brand of basketball. You can see some of the offensive and defensive sets that they're looking to do. The difference that I would point to is that the veterans are playing less and the young players are playing more. And the young players sure do seem like they're listening to the game plan a whole lot better than the veterans have been throughout this season. And look, when you're 12-42, if you're a veteran on this team, you have no reason to complain. You have been somebody who is part of the problem here. You lost. You're part of the reason why this team is not good, whether it's injury or ineffective play or lack of defensive intensity. Look, you have no excuse and you have no gripe. You can't say, well, I should be playing more than a young player. It's like, okay, well, why? Because the team's going to lose anyways, and your contract is running out. I need to see what these young players have. And to be honest, I think we're starting to see that. Max Reynaud has been playing a lot throughout the season. Dylan Cardwell over the last month and a half has been playing a ton more. Clifford has been playing. But then we have these other players that this team has on their roster. And it's not a lot of players, but I really like what I'm seeing from Daquan Plowden. He's a player who's super intriguing. I don't care that he's 27. Like, he's super affordable. He's on a two-way contract. The Kings don't even need to upgrade him to a regular roster spot. He's got the body. He's got the strength. He came and did a media session this week that was absolutely phenomenal. He just fully gets it. And to me, sometimes when it gets down to it, like, you need to see what you have hiding on your bench. And I think the other player that really is taking advantage of this, and all of a sudden in the last 3 games, is Devin Carter. Devin Carter, like, left for dead by this team completely. He's a player that the Kings drafted with the 13th overall pick. It's completely different front office at that point. And for whatever reason, that front office either didn't know that Dylan Carter had a shoulder problem and was going to need surgery, or they ignored that when they used a lottery pick on him. And I don't blame Dylan Carter for that. He went through an entire season last year, watching for the first 6 months of the season. And then when he finally did get his shot, he never really got an opportunity. The Kings were trying to win games or trying to fight. I think it's really interesting, though, we get to this year, and after sort of a up and down summer league and an up and down training camp, Dylan Carter has been like the forgotten man completely. And then all of a sudden you trade Keon Ellis, you trade Dennis Schroeder, and you have an injury to Malik Monk, or an illness to Malik Monk. You have an injury to Zach LaVine, and there's an opportunity. And I don't know if Devin Carter is going to be a good NBA player or not, but he's long, he's super athletic, he plays with incredible speed. His jumper is off. His blinders are crazy. His shot selection is not good, but he also makes some incredible passes. He makes some incredible defensive plays. We all know the type of rebounder he is. He was one of the best rebounding guards in NCAA coming out of the draft, over 9 rebounds a game as a college player. Like, this is a player that might be able to help the Kings moving forward. And he's clearly been humbled slightly by this experience, and that's a good thing. But watching him go out there and play, it's like there's a bunch of what ifs on this team. And this last 28 games or whatever it is, they really do have to focus on the what ifs. And so I'm hoping that we're starting to see that. I need to see more Neat Clifford, and more Neat Clifford games where he's active and engaged and shooting shots. I need to see Max Reynaud continue to get better on the defensive end. He compared himself to a baby giraffe this week, which I totally agree. When he came into the league, I looked like a baby giraffe out there, just like stumbling around, falling down. Defensively, he can be a train wreck. He's trying to get better. Dylan Cardwell, another player who, again, has never scored 20 points in a game through high school, college, or anything else. He's a player who's going to take development, but also let's see what Plowden's got. Let's see if Keegan Murray can take over. Let's see if Devin Carter can be part of the future, or at least part of the rotation for next season. And, I think that is what Kings fans should be looking at this point. And I'm not trying to put lipstick on a pig here. I'm just being honest. Like, at this point, I don't need to see what Russell Westbrook or DeMar DeRozan or Zach LaVine or even Domantas Sabonis has. I don't need to see it. I know who they are as players. I know what they've got. And I also know that the team was 12-42 with them all playing. And so at some point, it's got to be about something else. And I think that point is now. We got 2 games until the All-Star break, and then away we go. When we get out of the All-Star break, I expect this team to look even more different than they do today. And that is going to be with young players playing a ton. So again, not trying to be a glass half full, a glass empty, glass half empty. Just saying, hey, it's time. It is what it is at this point. So that's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Kings. Thanks for joining me. If you don't mind, hit thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, give us a rating and review wherever you listen to your podcast. And also, if you never miss an episode, it's time to make it official. Join the Locked On Everydayer Club and get ad-free audio, access to our members-only Discord, and more, all built for our most loyal fans. Click the link down in the description or go to lockedonpodcast.com/everydayerclub or lockedonkings.supercast.com and join in on the fun. See you tomorrow.